Live from Gotham City, it's the BatPodcast. I'm Pat the Batman fan, and we're back for part 2 of my interview with Wally Wingert. And today we're going to be talking about his role as the Riddler in the Arkham game series. Once again, I want to mention my theme song, The Guardian by Whitewall. It's really nice to have a theme song, and it's really nice to have such a cool theme song. You know what I like to do is I like to take a boombox up to my roof and I play this song and I put on a Batman suit and then I just stare over the edge of my roof with this song playing in the background, and then my neighbors, they'll walk by and walking their dogs or whatever and look up and see me there, and that's when I just swoop the cape and walk away. It's a lot of fun, and it makes them feel safer, I think. Okay, so let's start the show, where today I'll be talking to Wally about his voice acting career and about life as the Riddler.
I was always an actor and would always do characters and stuff as a kid. Mm-hmm. Charlton Heston told me on the phone once that radio was a good training ground for acting. I stayed up all night one night. I was listening to him on a call-in show, I think on something out of Salt Lake City that I was getting in South Dakota. And I kept ringing the phone. They finally put me on the air with him. And Mr. Heston's, I said, I want to be, a radio DJ, and can that help me in acting? He says, yeah, of course, anytime you get any sort of venue to perform or do anything, that will help you. So I'm like, okay. So I think I'd already maybe been in radio by then. I think I was maybe 16 and had just kind of started in radio. Mm-hmm. So I used it as a venue to do character voices and do acting and different kinds of things, as opposed to just being a radio DJ. I never used my own voice as a radio DJ. I always had some sort of character. So even when I was called Wally Wingert, the radio DJ, I didn't sound like I do now. I would always put on some kind of voice,
Sure.
And 13 KELO.
Nice.
And then you go, okay, so anyway, can I get a pizza with extra sauce and some pepperoni? Oh, hold on a second. 13 KELO. So even my announcer persona was a character. And that's one of the greatest things about working at The Tonight Show is they use those announcer characters in different capacities for comedy bits. Sports announcer, Viagra announcer, soft insurance, car insurance announcer,
right.
Hospital announcer, crazy announcer, newscaster, young newscaster, old newscaster. So I get to use all of my announcer characters. So I always, even the announcer that I do on The Tonight Show at the beginning doesn't really sound like me. It's an amplified, I call it my Happy Disney guy.
Right.
It's the guy that used to do, from the studios of Walt Disney Pictures, it's Peter Pan. It's that big smile. It's The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. It's just not what I normally sound like.
Right.
So but it's all a character. And I constantly have to tell my agents, well, if the producers say, well, we don't really want an announcer for this, you say, well, he's not. He's an actor. He does announcer characters.
Right.
And he just doesn't have to do an announcer character if that's not what you want. So, but they think, well, you have a job that's high profile, like announcer on The Tonight Show. They just picture you as like, oh, he's an announcer. Well, no. Luckily, I'd done a lot of different voices and animation and stuff before I got that job. So I had some street cred in animation doing characters before that. And I think now, so it was easier for people to realize that, oh, it's just another voice that he does that's a different kind of character. Right. So anyway, it's kind of fun. But the road to voiceover is multi-laned. There's a lot of lanes in the freeway to voiceover. And some people are really good if they stay in that lane. Some people can switch lanes and do all. Some people are really good in just a couple of lanes. Some people are really good only in animation. Some people are really good only in video games.
Right.
Some people are really good only in narration and promo and trailer and that kind of stuff. Very few people can actually cross all the lanes and make a pretty decent living in all aspects of that.
Yeah.
But if you can, it's more power to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was nobody. Luckily, I grew up with a family who was very supportive. And there was nobody to tell me no.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I want to stick a bunch of stuff on my face like Lon Chaney and be some crazy creature.
Yeah.
That looks like fun.
Yeah.
So you do it, and I would dig in my mom's makeup kit and get the colors I needed and do different things and turn into creatures, and whatever.
Did that come from the TV show horror hosts? And things
We didn't
like
really
that,
have
or?
horror hosts in the Midwest. We missed that boat, but we weren't a big enough market. But it was Famous Monsters magazine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would come on
Forrest
the
Ackerman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would come on the shelf every month at Four Brothers Market in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and I would luckily have enough paper money from my paperboy route, and I would get the 98 cents or whatever it was at the time, and
Right.
buy the magazine and sit there and obsess over it for a month and a half until the next issue came out. And it was it's like, oh, I want to be creatures like this. So you'd start figuring out, well, what can I stick to my face and what can I do that's safe that would make me look like this. So turning yourself into the Frankenstein monster, you get one of those rubber bathing caps that the women would wear when they would swim, and like, if I took a lid off of a coffee can, it's about the size of my head, it would make it flat. You could put it on and stretch the thing over my head, and then put some Halloween hair on it and draw a scar on it with a magic marker. I could probably make that work. So it was, you had to be resourceful.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Aberdeen, South Dakota, where you just didn't have a makeup store on every corner like you do here.
You've done a fair bit of, as you mentioned, animation voiceovers, Family Guy, obviously. How did you fall into the Riddler?
That came down as just an audition, and it showed up in my inbox, and they said they're looking for a bunch of characters for this new Batman video game that they're doing, and at the time you're like, okay, well, whatever. It would be fun. And the descriptions for the characters they had were way different and kind of reimagined from previous incarnations of Batman. Their main goal was to get a Riddler that did not sound anything like Mark Hamill's Joker. Because they were going to have Mark do the Joker, and they didn't want... And they're like, they're such similar characters that we really don't want them to be confused for each other. So they said, well, this guy's kind of like a game show host, and he likes to hear himself talk. So on this description, I'm like, okay, I think I know kind of who this is. And part of the voice was based on a director I had worked for in Sioux Falls at the community theater, who loved to chew his words whenever he had the chance to speak and be heard by his people he was directing. And he always was very pompous and very sarcastic and just kind of an interesting personality. I don't think he was mean-spirited necessarily. He just had this specific type of personality. He would pick his beard with his thumb and his ring finger, and between his middle finger and his his index finger, he'd have a cigarette burning, and he would pick his beard and then smoke, and then pick his beard and then smoke. Oh. And he'd think, and I can still see him to this day pacing the back of the theater as we're doing our run-throughs, picking his beard, pacing. He's got his script. He'd turn the page, smoke, pick his beard, and at the end of the show, he'd give us notes, and he'd say, I think we're up to performance quality, with the possible exception of Wally. And he just had this really... So I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the... so it was just kind of that voice that I was hearing for this Riddler, but a little more amplified.
Right.
And maybe not so deadpan, because... he did have to have that kind of lilting game show quality. Right. Well, Dark Knight, here we are again. Right. Riddle me this. So I thought, okay, that's it. And the first line was, roll up, it's the Enigma show. And he was kind of like announcing, and I didn't know any of this at the time, and I hadn't even seen him, because he was, in the first game, I think he was almost written in as kind of an afterthought. Right. I don't think he
didn't make a physical appearance.
He didn't make a physical appearance. Yeah, they had these recordings that you could access of him being interviewed in the asylum. Right. And then all these different little things that he would give you a hard time. But the writing on it was so amazing that people like, who is this guy? Where is he? How come we can't see the Riddler? Right. So then by the second game, they said, all right, well, now you're going to see him and he's going to have all this other stuff. And there was more Riddler stuff. And for the Origins game, it was... interesting because they went back in time before anybody was really anybody. Right. And they said, well, we're going to recast the Joker so he sounds younger. We're going to recast Batman so he sounds younger, but we think you can do a younger Riddler. So we really had a fair amount of interaction about what his voice would sound like, and I was most concerned with him not really being quite as comfortable in his skin yet. He's not quite as cocky, and he's starting to develop his personality, but he was just not quite set in his ways yet. He's still kind of finding his way.
Right.
As opposed to the older Riddler that's just like, I know, I'm the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
You all can just eat me.
Right.
You know? But the writing on that stuff is so delicious because they use these amazing words and lots of consonants to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half of the voice, one was this director fellow I was telling you about. And the other one was, I think at the time I was watching Wild Wild West on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
And
I won't ask why, but...
What's that?
I won't ask you what... Oh, the TV series.
Oh, the TV series.
Oh, I thought you meant the movie.
What movie?
The Will Smith movie.
There was no Will Smith movie.
Oh, my mistake.
Yeah, there was no Will Smith
My
movie.
mistake.
No. I was watching the series Wild Wild West
Right.
on DVD, and I fell in love with the way Michael Dunn did Dr. Miguelito Loveless. And just the amazing way that he had with saying the most horrible things, but in the most jolly type of way.
Right.
No, Mr. West, I'm going to hang you over a vat of oil and kill you.
Right.
Of course that's what else would you expect? So
Right.
I just thought that if the Riddler takes such great delight in saying these horrible things, I think one of the things he said in the initial interview tapes on the first one was something about doing these horrible things to a baby or something, and the interviewer said, "How can you say these things?" And he goes, "Easy, it's not my baby." And I was like, this guy is twisted.
That's nice.
Yeah, so a lot of fun.
Yeah, because I was thinking, boy, if Jim Carrey had played the Riddler this way in Batman Forever, could have been quite a different movie.
Yeah. Yeah, the writing on these things are just top notch.
Where did you record that stuff?
Initially, I think it was done at Salami in North Hollywood, Salami Studios,
sure.
and then they moved it over to ADR1 at Warner,
Mm-hmm.
and we did some there for a while. And now the other ones are at ADR 5 and 6 at Warner, which are special studios that they've built just for games.
Wow.
Yeah, they only do games there.
Warner Interactive have
Yeah.
their own little wing over there.
Yeah.
And kind of.
So it's to the point where, no, we're making enough money with this, we need to have just dedicated studios for just our game stuff.
Right.
You know, because they've got Lord of the Rings, they've got Batman, they've got all these major franchises that, can spawn these video games. So
Right.
something they need to do, But with a video game, you get pages and pages and pages.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a phone book. You walk in and it's just all your stuff. Because the amount of results in any type of gameplay situation varies so much from play to play to play.
Of course.
So they have to be kind of prepared for anything. So you have to just go 4 hours and then take a break, and then you go do another day and you do some more, and you take a break and you do
Wow.
another one until it's all done.
Have you played the games?
No, I'm not coordinated enough to actually play video games.
Yeah,
no.
but you've seen the gameplay and stuff.
Yeah,
like
on
that.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how many more games they're planning on making, but I think they ought to do a series, like a TV series.
Oh,
with all of
absolutely.
those in that world.
Absolutely.
And I think it'd be awesome. Or a feature film. Now that they've got the other, what's his name, Dark Knight movies done.
Well, Batman versus Superman with Ben Affleck. They're trying to build that into Justice League. Wonder Woman's going to be in it. They've announced now.
Yeah.
So
I'm skeptical, but
they could do something like HBO have a Arkham Asylum miniseries running in tandem with the movies, and that wouldn't take away from one or the other.
yeah. I haven't liked any other incarnation of Batman since the '66, other than the 1992 animated
series.
That I really seem to like.
Yeah.
Because I thought the look of it was unique and it was great, and it wasn't so dark that it was off-putting, and it wasn't so comedic that it was goofy, but it walked the line, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
And we got Harley Quinn out of it and all this great stuff. So, and to this day, Paul Dini's a good pal of mine, so it's fun to... A funny story. Eric Jacobson, who's the heir apparent to all the Frank Oz characters in the Muppets, it was on The Tonight Show, and I went to meet him. I was a big fan, and we became friends. And I said, hey, you know who a huge Muppet fan is Paul Dini, who does all the Batman stuff. He's like, oh, that's so weird. I said, why? And he said, because I'm always on Batman sites. And I'm like, oh, that's weird, because he's always on Muppet sites.
That's funny.
So Paul Dini's always checking out Muppet sites, and Eric Jacobson, who does Miss Piggy and Fozzie, is always on Batman sites. So they knew who each other were, and it's just I'm waiting for Eric, who lives in New York, to come here sometime so he and Paul and I can all get together and just talk about weird Muppet Batman stuff. And
well, you had kind of a little thing with the Muppets. You did a lot of the Muppet characters.
Oh, yeah,
right?
no, I wanted to be a Muppeteer when I was about 18 or 19.
Yeah.
And I had built Muppets and taught myself how to build Muppets and do the voices and do the puppeteering, and basically self-taught. Again, no internet.
Right.
Just looking at photos of the Muppets from calendars and any things I could catch on TV.
Right.
And, buying some of the Muppet toys and tearing them apart and figuring out how they were made.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a puppeteering experience, and I'm going to put some stuff on a tape, and I'm going to send it to them and try and get a job. I want to be trained. So as a class project in high school, I did a half-hour show with all my Muppet characters called Summer Safety Tips for Kids. And it was running on the little channel there that our high school had that we'd run it on. And I sent it to them and said, hey, here's my demo. And they said, never show this anywhere again, or we will sue you for copyright infringement. I was crushed, but life wasn't meant to go that way.
Right.
I just find it ironic that in 1982 or 3, a guy in South Dakota who wants to be a Muppeteer more than anything is being threatened with a lawsuit because he made a tape.
Right.
Now in the age of the internet, people are taking Kermit the Frog puppets and Rolf puppets and animal puppets on YouTube and doing the most foul, vile, undignified things you can possibly imagine, and that's just allowed to continue. I was like, wait a minute. A kid who wants to be a Muppeteer more than anything is threatened to be sued, but this can go on?
Right.
Explain that to me. I do not get that at all.
Yeah. Well, it all turned out well in the end anyway.
Yeah, well, the puppeteering experience got me my SAG card because I did a puppet character that was kind of a Muppet takeoff on Murphy Brown. That got me my SAG card in 1992. And the first voice I ever got cast to do on Family Guy was Bert from Sesame Street, a voice that I'd done since 6th grade.
Nice.
So it all works out. But, life is like that. Sometimes you think you're being prepared for one angle, and it's like, no, you have that experience, but we're going to veer you off into this angle now a little bit. So it's like, okay. And I've since worked for the Muppets, doing voiceover for video games and things like that, and I've told them the story and showed them the leather and like, oh my gosh, that doesn't sound like us at all.
Right.
If we see a kid who's interested, we try and do everything we can to encourage that. Somebody must have been having a really bad day, and took it out on me because it's like, oh. But I said, wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, it all comes full circle in the end. And speaking of that, we're probably pretty near the end of our interview. Real quick, let's just play 6 Degrees of the Riddler.
Oh, yes.
The different incarnations. Michael Bell from Challenge of the Super Friends.
I don't recall that one.
He was a member of the Legion of Doom.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah. Michael Bell, who also did Zan and and a few of the other villain voices. Sure. Yeah. Have you ever run into Michael in your voice?
Every once in a while. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. We've done a few video games together.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Okay, that's good. Frank Gorshin.
Yes.
Obviously your
Frank
favorite.
well. Yes.
And you knew Frank.
He's been over here, He signed my wall and stuff. So when Frank's was over here with his girlfriend, she had never really seen any of his Riddler stuff. She just knew old Frank, and Frank was kind of slow and walking and stuff. And he's jumping around and hopping around. She's like, Frank, you look like some sort of bug. Yeah, because he thought that was funny because he was hopping around, jumping around. His legs were... I have a empty pack of his cigarettes. Of course, he died of emphysema.
Yeah.
And he was trying to quit at the time he was over here. He had one half a cigarette left, and he was walking around asking if any of us smoked, if he could bum a cigarette. And we're like, none of us smoke, Frank. I'm really sorry. Really? No, none of you smoke? So he smoked the last half a cigarette out on my porch, and then threw away the American Spirit box in my trash, and I kept it. And when he passed away, I wrote, "Rest in peace, Frank Gorshin," with his birth date and his death date on it.
Oh, wow.
And it's on display in my cabinet there.
Wow. That's a good stop smoking ad there.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson to me that, because you listen to how great he was at doing voices in the 60s, and as it went through the 70s and 80s, and he could barely do the Riddler laugh toward the end. I mean, Even in '89, when the Batman thing started to kind of resurface on talk shows and stuff, he couldn't really do the laugh anymore. He'd go, right. He'd be all out of air.
Right.
He didn't have the tool anymore. I'm like, oh man, this guy's voice was his life, and to ruin it like that was just, it's sad that he had such a great instrument and just did not care for it at all.
Wow.
It's very sad. I will do a nod occasionally. When I do the laugh, I'll go into his upper register just briefly, and then come back down. So it'll be, because his was like, like that.
Right.
So I'll go, and I'll just hit him just for a little bit,
Neat.
just as a nod.
John Astin?
I liked the John Astin Riddler, but it was different. It was different than he was more subdued. It wasn't as crazy.
Jim Carrey.
I thought of all the characters Jim Carrey could play, the Riddler was probably suited him very well.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
John Glover.
He was good. A little soft-spoken and maybe not quite as evilly driven as I would have liked to have seen, because he's a smart guy, but he has evil intent. There was only one Riddler episode, I think, that they ever did in the old TV series. I think because they didn't quite know what to do with him. They didn't want him to be a Joker.
Right.
Because the Joker had taken on such a life of its own that I think they said, well, let's not do any more Riddler stuff because he's too close to the Joker and we don't really know what to do with him.
I think they did one in the second version with the character redesigns too. But
they did?
This is the one where he becomes a consultant for a toy company.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. I need to revisit those on DVD. Yeah, they're great. They're great episodes.
Robert Englund.
And he was the Riddler where?
In The Batman, the cartoon series that was on in the mid-2000s.
Oh, totally missed out on that one.
It was actually a pretty good version of it. Robert is a great actor.
Yeah.
And
terrific.
I thought they gave him a really interesting kind of backstory. A lot of people kind of complained because the character design was sort of... Marilyn Manson was the phrase they threw around.
Oh, I do remember that.
But I thought the characterization of it was quite good. Have you worked with Robert?
No, I've met him several times.
Yeah,
but never worked with him. Yeah.
You did Freddy Krueger, didn't you?
I did for 2 TV commercials in 1989 and 1990. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Because it was a little job and it was not his money that he was used to getting.
right.
And I actually stood in for him one day, which was kind of fun, on one of the Nightmare movies.
Oh, very cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yes, I see you. The glove up there on the wall.
Yeah. So I've actually seen him in makeup as Freddy, because I was on the set and it's like seeing Glenn Strange or one of the Frankenstein monsters in makeup on the set and going, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the Frankenstein monster in person. Who gets to see that? Yeah. My friend Barry Denon, who's another voiceover actor, has done a ton of on-camera stuff. And we're looking at his resume, his IMDb page. He's one of the few actors I know who has seen Adam West as Batman in person, Christopher Reeve as Superman in person, and Linda Carter as Wonder Woman in person. He's been on all those shows. I'm like, Barry, you've got, that's a trifecta. He played Fred in one of the Shame episodes, 3rd season Batman. He played a doctor, a chemist, in Superman 3, when Superman comes down to make sure that the chemicals don't catch fire. And he played Hitler in one of the Wonder Woman episodes. So he's a great actor, but I know him best as Pilot in Jesus Christ Superstar and the voice of Chamberlain in Dark Crystal. So he's one of those journeyman guys who just have done everything.
Wow.
But I'm so comfortable in voiceover that I really don't have much of an interest in doing any on-camera stuff ever.
Well, you've carved out a nice little corner of the world here for yourself.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. I like it.
Well, that's it for the show today, folks. Hope you had a great time. I sure did. I really want to thank Wally Wingert for inviting me over to Planet Wallywood and sitting down to have this talk and sharing his insights and stories with us. It was a lot of fun. He's a great guy. I highly recommend you check out his website at wallyontheweb.com. But before we go, it's time for our monthly trivia contest.
That's right, folks. It's time for Riddle Me This. It's America's favorite arch-villain-themed quiz show.
The winner of this month's quiz is going to win an Arkham City Riddler figure autographed by the man who voiced him, Wally Wingert. So, here we go. Here is this month's riddle. What weighs 6 ounces, sits in a tree, and is very dangerous? Once again, what weighs 6 ounces, sits in a tree and is very dangerous. We need the answer to the riddle and what version of Batman media did it appear in. So if you think you have the answer, go ahead and email me at thebatpodcast@gmail.com, and the winner will be picked from all the correct entries that I receive by February 20th. So good luck, put your thinking caps on. Until next time, I'm Pat the Batman Fan. Looking forward to seeing you here next month for more fun-filled interviews with real-life citizens of Gotham City on the Bat Podcast, live from Gotham City.